Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Lunch and Learn session. I'm Dr. Eddie Patton. I'm a neurologist in Houston, past president of TNS and current chair of the Medical Economics Committee. And excited to come to you at lunch today. This will be a great topic to just enjoy your lunch, relax, and talk about AI. And it's one of those topics where everyone has mixed feelings about it, mixed emotions about AI. How is it making its way into healthcare? Is it going to make my life better? Is it going to make the lives of my patients better? So I chose specifically dictation because as we look at artificial intelligence and how it's coming into healthcare, this has been one of the fastest applications and sort of the easiest applications to adapt. And we'll talk a little bit about why that's the case. But if you don't think, or if you're still a part of the group that says, oh, there's no room for AI in healthcare, it's not coming, it is here. It's here, it's coming fast, and it's evolving. So, want to make sure that we provide content so that we can learn about how these things are applicable. So some disclosures, I'm a part of a few AI committees, a few health information technology committees as well, and have done some training. I have an MIT certificate in AI and healthcare and currently a part of a Stanford program as well. So some of the objectives, and my goal is to get through the slides, but I really want to make this interactive. So, I don't plan on talking for the entire hour. I want to cut it off so we can have some interaction, and then you can have a little break before the 1 o'clock session. But I'll give an overview of AI in healthcare. We'll talk about description of large language models. We'll talk about how can AI help with dictations and documentations, available products, and then pitfalls and problems as well. And then hallucinations, which is a big topic now when we talk about AI. And then we'll get to questions. So when I think about AI in healthcare, I like to divide it up into a couple of big categories. So you have patient care management, which is largely what we'll be talking about today. You have diagnostics and treatment. And this bucket tends to be the one that becomes more controversial. This bucket could include things like, AI reads of radiological imaging, predictive analytics, diagnostics, and so forth. It's an evolving part of AI, and it's a very interesting part of AI, but a little more controversial. And then you have healthcare administration. These are AI tools that help to administer healthcare, whether it be from the back end healthcare dealing with billing and coding to practice administration, different things like that. So there are these large categories of AI within healthcare, and there are products, there are companies, there are a lot of people doing a lot of work in each of these categories. I was just speaking earlier to a group about this whole concept of smart hospitals. In Houston, we have a smart hospital, but, from ICUs, we just talked about brain death and ICU, this whole concept of how to use AI between wearables. I got my Oura Ring and my Apple Watch, to help. How are we using AI to help us doctor in between doctor visits? Now, a lot of these terms that we hear in the media and everything else are kind of thrown around loosely, and we don't really know or understand what exactly does that mean. So I want to just give a little terminology just so it level sets. Maybe some people have a lot of experience with AI and understand, and some don't. But when you hear about machine learning, and I'm going to give two definitions. The formal definition is a family of statistical mathematical modeling techniques that uses a variety of approaches to automatically learn and improve the prediction of a target objective without explicit programming. That last sentence, without explicit programming, is important. So if you think about I'm dating myself, but how many people remember Frogger on Nintendo? Great game, I know, it's a lot of fun. So, you know, the frog there and it's jumping across the lily pad, a log comes down the river, you hit the button once, it jumps once, you know. So imagine Frogger, and you hit the button once, it jumps over one log, then two logs come down and you hit the button twice and it does a backflip over those two. So in a regular program, algorithm, you know, you have to sit there and do that. You have to hit the button once to jump, you hit the button twice, it does a backflip over two, and every 10th log is 2 logs. So with machine learning, you set the program in place up front, and as you play the game, you know, you jump over that first log, then every 10th log, you push the button twice. As you continue to play, the machine learns what you're doing, so that eventually you have to jump over that first log, but then you don't have to push the button twice to jump over the second one. Then eventually, guess what? You don't have to push the button at all, because now, and you haven't changed anything to the model, you haven't done anything to the actual program itself. So that's the concept of machine learning, is that this is an actual program, an algorithm that you don't have to go into and make changes and adjustments, but it's learning off of what you do. And that's essentially the informal definition, is that systems that can improve their performance in a given task through exposure, experience, or data. So when we look specifically at documentation, you know, what's wrong with current documentation? Well, there's increased administrative burden. We dictate to meet requirements rather than capturing information. This is part of the whole realm of things that have come in with electronic health records, where we often find ourselves at the computer pecking away, putting in information, and we're like, why is this important? Well, it has to fit some regulatory requirement or something like that. And when you look at the research on burnout and different things in which physicians are most complaining about, increased administrative burden ranks up there at the top as far as things that are really interfering and affecting our job and our ability to provide good health care. So documentation requirements continue to contribute to burnout. You have this decrease in the patient-physician engagement. And this could be a simple thing as how they design your exam rooms. Like, I remember I was at one facility where the computer kind of folded out of the wall, but the wall was directly behind the patient exam table. So as I'm typing, I'm like doing this, trying to talk to the patient, and I had a computer, my other office, you know, the computer was a desktop. So I literally had my desktop, but I would bring my laptop so I can put it on the station with wheels, so that I could put my computer in between me and the patient, so that I could at least establish eye contact and look, and pay attention to what the patient is saying. So there is this notion that it decreases the patient-physician engagement, because it's hard to sit there and just take notes and say, I want to just put everything down and talk to my patient and go back in the back and I'll type all this up. Well, that takes a lot of time. There's this thing of we're trying to capture so much information that this could lead to note bloat. And we've all seen the copying and pasting, and you get records from someone and they put every lab for the past 5 years that's automatically gone over, and every imaging for the past 10 years of the patient. And you're like, man, what do I got to get through all of this? So, but it's partly because we're trying to meet these regulatory requirements that are imposed upon us, that we can sometimes bloat our notes. And then lastly, the increased physician pajama time, documentation after hours. Pajama time is a real term that's used in studies and terminology, and it's that time that we all do when we go home, or we're staying late after clinic, and we're not directly taking care of people. We're just cleaning up notes, finishing notes. Particularly if you're an employed physician, all these systems have things in place where you got to close your visit within, it used to be a couple of days, now it's 1 day, and they keep making it shorter and shorter amount of time. So there's this intense pressure to finish your work. And a lot of times that rolls over to when you go home, and we call that pajama time. Well, that's taking away time from your family. That's taking away time from whether you want to go do something relaxing, like take a walk, exercise, go to the gym, meditate, all of those things that we need to be doing to take care of ourselves as physicians. So, some more terminology. So, when we talk about natural language processing, this is a process that uses machine learning, what we talked about earlier, that enables computers to understand and communicate human language. Now, natural language processing is throughout the AI landscape. And there's some good products, like what we'll talk about with Dictation. And there's other things that are a little bit wild to me. There was an article I saw of some technology out of China where the thought was that in order to reduce depression and adjustment disorder in people who have lost their loved one, they have an AI laptop device that by just inserting pictures and maybe voicemails from your loved one, it will recreate them so that you can sit there and continue to have a conversation with them even though they've passed away. Now, I'm sure some psychiatrists in the room who can comment on that, but to me, that seems a little extreme and too much, but that's the extent of what you can do with natural language processing, because it's interpreting human language and communicating and trying to kind of answer. We see the same thing, sticking with psychology and psychiatry, like another example would be like in wellness programs where okay, it's a long wait to see or talk to a psychologist. So if you're having some issues at work, not really feeling that good psychologically, well, there may be an app or some type of AI program that you can chime into and just, let them, hey, I'm not feeling my best today, I'm kind of depressed, and talk through things. So that's the use of natural language processing. It's a generative AI from large language models. The goal is to assist in like these repetitive tasks in healthcare to reduce costs and burnout, and can reduce burnout in physicians. So how does AI scribing differ from voice-to-text software? And I remember, because I can't type. I'm horrible at typing. I've gotten a lot better, but I remember when I got my first Dragon mic, and it was like, wow. So now I can voice dictate, and I felt like, I was king of the world. It was reducing the amount of time that it was taking me to do my notes and everything else. But the difference between AI scribing and voice-to-text software is that AI learns from repeated documentation. And if you just use a Dragon mic, it's taking the information that you're speaking into the microphone or the computer or whatever apparatus you use, and it's basically just trying to type out what you're saying where you say it. So if I want to type out past medical history, I have to click on the past medical history section, speak out what I want to say, double check and see, okay, if there's any typos or wrong information. If I want to type out the assessment plan, I have to click in that area as well. But what AI scribing does is it doesn't just scribe what you say, it deciphers what you're saying and it categorizes it. So for instance, when I'm in my visits now and I have my scribe going, you can jump from multiple places. Like I may be talking to a patient and I'll just say, hey, okay, I see your MRI results that were done on January 29th. And, no acute changes, but it does show some small vessel disease, could be migraines or small vessel disease. And we continue with the conversation. And when you get to your note, it automatically deciphers that and puts that in the results section as opposed to having to click on the results section and speak out what I want to say. So the notion here is that it's different because it's actually more active in the process, meaning that you don't have to constantly click and just talk and interpret. It's actually listening to the whole conversation and deciphering as if it was a person there where this should go, and also what information is just small talk. There's a lot of small talk that goes on during visits. Now, typically you don't dictate that, but these programs, and it's amazing how it works, but you can sit there and talk for 10, 15 minutes with a patient about things, other things, life, kids, and everything else. And the program can decipher that that's not medically relevant, so we don't need to do that. Now, if you were sitting there with your Dragon mic on, it's going to record all of that, and you got to go in and delete, everything you're talking about baseball and travel baseball. Any of y'all got kids in travel baseball? It's a racket, I tell you, but a lot of times, we're talking about baseball, talking about stuff, but the device is constantly going. But I don't have to stop. When I get to my note, it automatically takes all of that out. So think of it more as an active process, and that's how it's differing from your direct voice to text, because if you keep your Dragon mic on, it's going to just record all of that, and you got to go in there and try to delete it. I'm out on time. Okay. So when we think about AI and clinical documentation, this is kind of the flow. You have the patient-physician conversation, and this is really a conversation. That's what I really like about this now. I still have my iPad, and I take a few notes, but for the most part, I put my phone down, and I sit like this, and I just have a conversation with the patient. It's not like scripted. I don't have to say, okay, tell me about your past medical history. Tell me about this. You just conversate, and it automatically can extrapolate family history, past medical history, and it categorizes and puts it. So patients like it because they sit there and they can just have a conversation with you, and you're not, okay, let's talk about this now, and let me go to this section. It automatically does that. So it really does, in my view, removes a barrier between the patient and the physician, and it makes the visits more conversational. And because of that, the visits actually go faster. It then takes that conversation, it transcribes it, and extracts all information that you don't necessarily need in your note. And then with a push of a button, it transcribes it and creates a note and formats it. And literally what that means for me, I use a bridge program. You start, put the phone down, you have the visit. Afterwards, you pick the phone back up, you hit stop recording, and you hold the button down, and there's a little red circle. Once it's complete, it'll tell you go to your Epic, go to your computer, and then bloop, 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 bloop. The note is there. And there's not a long delay. You don't have to wait hours for the note to be there. Usually it's there real time, and then you can make your edits. Now, the reason I put this in here is because in healthcare, there are a number of reasons why AI in healthcare, we're not as easy to adapt AI as another thing. And a lot of times it has to do with transparency. So if I were to say, I created an AI app that you can wake up in the morning, and with the 98% rate of a positive rate, I can help you pick your stocks, and it'll give you a 35% return on your investment. People say, wow, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I'll sign up for that. Let me pick some stocks. But no one really asks, well, how does it do it? Am I looking at the lunar waves and predicting based on the date or anything else? And in AI, that's where the problem is. It's in explainability and what's called transparency. You have these what they call black box programs, which are these algorithms that are doing great stuff, but nobody can explain how it works. And so you just have to kind of trust the model. Well, in healthcare, that doesn't quite work, because if you have a predictive analytic model that says based on your cancer and this diagnosis, it's a chance that you're gonna pass away in 2 years. You want to know what data are you using? How are you doing that? That's the transparency and the explainability behind some of these AI models. So the explainability is, how does the algorithm get its results? What's the formula? What are you using? What data are you putting in there to get that? As opposed to other industries like tech, oil and gas, finance, whatever, in healthcare, we need to know how you're getting this data. What type of formula, how are you getting that? And that, unfortunately, in AI can become an obstacle into those who are creating it. The data sets, where did the data come from and how are they processed? We're not dealing with numbers and finance. We're dealing with patients and labs and imaging results. This is real-time stuff. So this data in healthcare is a lot more sensitive and protective. And then this algorithm, how was the algorithm developed? How was it validated? How was the algorithm created to create this architecture that was pieced together to create this AI program? Now, in healthcare, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of apprehensive toward a lot of things because of the things we mentioned here. But when we look at ambient technology, it has been one of the fastest AI-adapted technologies in healthcare because it kind of answers a lot of these questions. I mean, it's easy to explain. It's a dictation software. The data set comes from an office visit. So with the easier you can answer these questions, typically the easier it's going to be to adapt this product, and where more people will feel pretty safe about doing dictations as opposed to letting an AI program read your MRIs. So there's a paper that was published this past fall that looked at the assessing the quality of AI generated notes. Really interesting how they developed this, and this will probably be a model on how they test in the future. But they took some specific clinical visits, so they even broke it down to different subspecialties. They recorded those, made them anonymous, and then they categorized it into two different categories. First category was they used Suki, which is a AI program, and they created what's called an ambient note, which is essentially a note like if you were using an AI transcription. The other category, they used physicians to listen to the visit and create their own notes, and they call these gold notes. And what they wanted to do was then compare the quality, and they looked at different metrics based on PDQ-9 and just different metrics looking at was this note accurate? Did it have a lot of extra stuff? Was it succinct? And compared the two. So some of the findings, there was a preference for the gold notes, which again are the physician-driven notes, over the ambient notes in categories like accuracy, succinctness, and internally consistent. And when you think about that, it actually makes sense because an AI program, it still doesn't know the human touch as far as, okay, what's important, what's really not important that we need in this visit. It has to continue to learn that. It doesn't know that yet. But again, these are machine learning programs, so as we continue to flow through there, I don't know where this whole industry is going to be 5 years from now, or even 2 years from now, versus 5 years versus 10 years from now. Now, the ambient notes were preferred over the gold notes, so the scribe notes over the physician-generated notes on thoroughness and organization. So the ambient notes were able to organize the information better than the physicians. And when looking at the evaluators, they identified hallucinations in both the gold notes, which are the physician notes, and the ambient notes. And then specialists typically favored the ambient notes. And I think that's because it's just a lot more information for specialists such as us and neurologists, a lot more information. So you need that organization and that thoroughness within the notes. So overall, there was a note preference toward the ambient notes, and the authors thought that there would be a distinct difference between the performance of the physician-generated notes, the gold notes, outperforming the ambient notes, but what they actually found was that there wasn't really a significant underperformance relative to the physician author notes. So when you look at AI scribing, like I said, even a year, 2 years ago versus now, it's continuing to get better and better and better, and that is because there's continuous data that's being fed into the system to optimize and make it better. So some of the trade-offs, of course, succinctness and hallucinations. There is still a human advantage in synthesizing this information and to avoiding some of the redundancy and contraindications. So if you think you're going to just get an AI scribe and be able to sit there with your patient, go back, click the button, and just, hit save, that's not the case. I have to review all of my notes, particularly the assessment and plan. I have to take out, because it does add a lot of extra, well, it doesn't add a lot of extra stuff, but there may be things, for instance, if you're talking with a patient and you start talking about, their blood pressure, or they just volunteer information like, oh yeah, my blood pressure's been doing a little bit better, they changed this medication. Typically, you may not add that because it's not dealing with what you're dealing with, but it's going to have that in the note. There's a whole section that you address their blood pressure and everything else. So you either have to decide whether you're going to address that in a note or just delete it. So that's the redundancy and the kind of the succinctness that the human element is geared toward. Now, this is just a list of products that are out there now. This list is ever growing. One thing I will say about this, if you're asking, or if you want to know what do I recommend, what's the best product, I have no way of knowing. They don't do head-to-head comparisons, and there's really no way of knowing what's the right product for you without going in, doing your own investigation, looking at what's important, look at what integrates into your EHR, and finding that product that works for you. Years ago, when this first started, I remember I was at the AMA meeting and I talked to leadership. I said, hey, we should try to create something where we can help physicians learn which product is best and this and that. And they were like, oh no one wants to get into that. It means you're promoting this product over that. But now as things have evolved, even between AMA, Harris County Medical Center, everybody is forming AI boards now and trying to figure out at least how can we create checklists or something to help, because as with any other industry, there's a lot of money in this. And so when that happens, a lot of companies are going to start producing products, and then it becomes, okay, I want to do AI scribe, but which one? And which one fits in? So some of the benefits of AI scribing, and I'll talk about patients first. So first of all, more face time with the patient or clinical provider. Some quotes like, my doctor has focused more on me than pecking away at his or her keyboard. And I can tell you, I feel this in clinic because patients like when you can just engage with them. And as I mentioned, I may occasionally take a few notes. I may have to go to my computer and look up imaging or something like that. But for the most part, I'm just talking to them, engaging. They feel it's less intrusive than a live or human scribe. And I've never personally ascribed to having a human scribe in the room, but I could think if I was there and there's this person in the corner kind of typing away, you may not share some information, some personal information that you may want to just share with your doctor because you have this other person in the room that's a human scribe. And whenever I give this talk, people always, one question I always get is, well, what's going to happen to that whole industry? Are people going to lose their jobs because of AI? Absolutely. And when it comes to human scribe, at the rate that this industry is going, I certainly think that there is some, cause to pause and think of, will we still need human scribes in the future? But even just from the patient standpoint, they may find it a little more intrusive having a live human there in the room as well. And then these systems continue to learn and document in a way that helps to delay problems in authorization, treatment denials, So what that means is that, let's say that there's a particular a piece of documentation that you need to add in your note every time to get a MRI approved or something approved. Well, if you have a system that can learn that that's there, it can pick up on certain subtleties within the visit to be able to add that. So unlike a live or human scribe or just other system that may just be reproducing what you're saying word for word, this does have kind of a virtual assistant component to it that's trying to help you do your job better. So that's one of the benefits to patients, is that it can delay or it can decrease delay when it comes to things like prior authorizations and denials. Now, some of the benefits for physicians, here's that term pajama time again. So we're seeing a reduction in pajama time. There are a lot of studies that have shown that AI has had a positive impact on physician burnout. I will tell you my personal experience. When I was using Just Dragon, I was averaging, I may go 2 or 3 days without closing out all my notes on a day, depending on how many patients and so forth. I know that's bad, y'all, you can look at me how you want, but, I tend to do long visits, so, I'm seeing patients, I'll put it off, and then I'll go home, do something, I'll come back the next day, and I'll try to do some more from that day before. So it may go, some notes may go a day or two, and so forth. Now, I'm like 100% done with my notes, typically within 15, 20 minutes of the visit. I don't have any notes that go over to the next day. It is really, and I'm actually using less time dictating, and because of that, we've been able to add more patient slots. So, you can be booked out to whenever. Well, guess what? If we can add more patient slots to our clinic, that's a positive thing. So for me personally, I can't say this for everybody, but for me personally, I'm using less time dictation. The department is happy because all my notes are closed. As a matter of fact, I recently had to slow down because my MAs started complaining because they're like, look, we need to put the orders in and put the mocha in and all this type of stuff. I was just close. I'm like a machine now. I'm like, boom. And they're like, wait, slow down. We need to put this stuff in for compliance reasons or whatever. So I had to slow down myself, and so I don't actually hit close until after they've done all they need to put in there. But that's how much faster I've gotten now by using the AI Scribe. So it helps better work-life balance. Notes are a lot more accurate and concise, and things are not lost in translation. And there are different ways you can set it up. Some people set it up like bullets. I like paragraphs. I kind of like an expression. And everything is in there, but it's not like so piecemeal. Like I might describe the labs and the MRI and how it did, and it'll have it all in there. So it's fulfilling that criteria, but it's much more concise and condensed as far as my notes. And as I mentioned earlier, just less time documenting, so that frees you up for more times like increasing patient volume or actually taking a lunch, or doing some meditation. Take a meditation break throughout the day. So you have more time to do those things. Make sure I leave time for questions. To the administrators, they find it cheaper than live scribes. Guess what? If your physicians are happy and not burnt out, they're going to be more productive for you as an administrator. So that's a good thing. And as we continue to evolve, you'll see some optimization of some of this regulatory documentation as well. What happened here? Sorry. Yep, regulatory documentation. So some of the challenges, and I think the cost is both a challenge and an advantage. And it's interesting to watch how this has evolved over the years, because I remember when I was reading the studies out of UAB when they were piloting the iPad scribe and looking at, okay, are these iPad scribes better than live scribes? But now and that was just a couple of years ago. But most products are going to range from 100 to 600 per clinician per month. If you do have a large group, this of course adds up. But when you compare it to a live scribe, which typically ranges in person, 2,500 to 4,500 per month. And happy to hear if anyone uses live scribes or these notes if these numbers are pretty accurate, or even a virtual scribe where you're looking at 1,000 to 1,200 per user per month. So there can be a cost advantage, and that's why I said when you look at the economics of this and you look at the whole job category of a live scribe, how much longer will particularly if you're employed or if you work for a system, will systems start demanding that? Well, I don't mean not say demand. Systems will strongly encourage you to use a virtual scribe as opposed to a live scribe. And this differs for everybody. I work with a neurosurgeon. He didn't want anything to do with this. He has a live scribe, and he didn't want anything to do with it. I was gung-ho about piloting and everything else, but what happens to our freedom if an employer starts saying, hey, we're going to switch you to a AI scribe as opposed to your live scribe, and maybe you don't want that. So there's the implementation and rollout. Again, a large part of that has to do with what you're comfortable with, what you want, and then how do physicians and patients perceive this. In my years of doing AI scribing, I've only had one patient that tell me no. He was kind of a conspiracy theorist, government and truth. He's like, no, I don't want you having that thing. I said, fine. Put my phone back in my pocket, and I just conducted a visit as I normally would. But and again, the time I've been doing it, only one patient. Most patients, when you explain it, hey, listen, I use this. So here's my spiel. I use this AI program for doing my notes and dictation. It just allows me to be more engaged with you. Are you okay with that? Most people are like, yeah, sure. And that's it. There's your consent. I click, I consented the patient. And the patients understand when you have your phone on your desk, okay, he isn't recording, he isn't this and that. This is something that he is actually helping him to engage with me better. So for the most part, patients seem to be pretty acceptable. Be careful when there's multiple people in the room. It will pick up other conversations. If you're talking to the husband, wife, or anything else, it'll pick that up. So you got to be careful with that. Some programs don't do well with accents in other languages. There are going to be increased regulatory things dealing with AI and dictation, and even using like foreign language scribes and so forth. That's long term, but like how I use it, we have a video interpreter, and I'll use my AI scribe even for that. And it will interpret the video interpreter or the patient. I don't think it's interpreting the foreign language, but that may be coming in the future. But you do have to be careful of that when you do have severe accents or other languages there as well. Software doesn't. This is the biggest hang up is medications. I mean, for some reason, these programs do not learn medications. They don't put in orders for the most part, I don't think either. But medications are just a big thing. Always verify medication, and hallucinations, which we'll talk about later. So never forget that the human element is very important. Always read the note, correct the information. So here's another study, and I'm coming up on closing now, that looked at the impact of AI Scribe on streamlining clinical documentation. It was a systemic review in healthcare in June 2025. Some of the findings. It reduced documentation time and improved clinical workflow. It may help alleviate the perception of documentation burden. The impact on patient outcomes and systemic efficiency remains limited and inconsistent. Again, this is one of the products that is really physician-driven. Systems don't really benefit that much from this, except for if you are able to get more visits in because you're using less time documenting. But for the most part, most of the benefit that has come out of this has been to physicians, reducing burnout, increasing quality of life. There have been some variability in performance and limitations, which again, you have to do your research if you do want to go into this and on the products that you use. And there's further research needed to address concerns related to patients' perspective, data, algorithm bias, job placement, and the evolving dynamics of healthcare workforce in the context of AI adoption. Now, there are going to be a number of regulatory concerns when it comes to AI. What's going to happen with the data? If you've been following, I think it was in December, Trump put out an executive order regarding this, and that he didn't really want states regulating AI. But I talked to a number of lobbyists who said, well, they may not be able to really to do that. So questions that we're going to have questions concerning who's going to regulate this. I certainly anticipate, we're here in Austin now, during the next session next year, there will be things happening in Austin concerning AI and healthcare and how at a state level we're going to regulate it. But that's always a concern. What happens to the data? Where does it go? Is it saved? Is it housed? How do I consent patients? This is actually a big deal. And this, you ask the 10 people, they'll tell you 10 different things. There's some who don't think you need to even consent a patient. And we may get to the point where it becomes implicit that if you go to your doctor's office, they're using some type of AI technology. Or maybe you put a sign in the front of your office that just says, hey, I use AI technology. I personally, I told you my spiel, that's what I do at the beginning of every visit. Now, after I've seen a patient, if they're there for follow-up, I don't necessarily do it because they see me picking up my phone and putting it out and they know what it is. Am I right for that, or will I get in trouble? I don't know. I mean, that's the piece that's kind of up in the air. But, for the most part, I do get a verbal consent for my patients. And then some of the medical legal implications, and this is more so when it comes to things like interpreting films and so forth, or what happens when you don't use AI. If I have a product that reads chest x-rays better than radiologists, then what happens if I don't use that product? Then can I be medical legally liable because I didn't use the product? So, those are some of the medical legal issues that we'll continue to monitor. In the end, when it comes to all of this, check with your institution as it continues to grow, continues to be worked out. Organizations now have caught on. Like I said, a couple of years ago, AMA didn't want to touch it. Now they have an AI regulatory framework. I work with TMA on their HIT committee. We just formed Harris County Medical Society, AI committee, the current chair of that. So now, organizations are starting to figure out that we need to help physicians to really figure this out. And lastly, hallucinations. There's a term in AI, garbage in, garbage out, meaning these programs only learn based on the data that you are putting in. So with hallucinations, the thought is that an AI system is incentivized to not get things wrong. So it doesn't know, I don't know, as an answer. So instead of saying, I don't know, it creates stuff. And those are called hallucinations. So it's basically output generated by an AI system in a large language model, generative model. It's plausible sounding, meaning it's kind of like if you got somebody that is a good BSer that can, kind of talk, but when you go back and you're like, man, it really didn't make no sense what they said. That's the same thing with hallucinations. It's fabricated information that can be false and misleading, but it's related to what is said. And that's why human oversight is so critical. There have been a number of papers published by OpenAI researchers, and hallucinations is one of the biggest problems that we're seeing now in these large language models. And they persist because it's a way that most evaluators are graded. Language models are optimized to be good test takers, and guessing when uncertain improves test performance. So again, the system is incentivized to guess, but we don't guess. We like concrete information. So you always need to read the information and really make sure that human element is correct. But hallucinations, just so you know, that's what the term means. That's what it is when you start seeing it in a lot of the data. So what's next for ambient technology? Hopefully we're moving to the point where they're incorporating the order so that I can talk to a patient. I can say, hey, look, I'm going to order this medication. Let's get an EMG nerve conduction study. Maybe MRI of the lumbar spine. I'll see you back in 6 months, and it automatically incorporates that and then informs the order as well. We're not really there yet, but hopefully that's in the future. Enhancing nursing capabilities. And this smart rooms and smart hospitals is a pretty cool concept. Some of the work I've done, and even some of the classes with MIT, they're coming out with what's called invisible wearables. So as I told you, I have an Oura Ring on, I got my Apple Watch, we got different devices and stuff you can attach to you. But their thing is, let's say you have a patient with Parkinson's disease. I can put a wearable in the wall that, without the patient knowing, it's monitoring their data. So it's looking at and can track, and I've seen this, it tracks their steps around the house. It tracks their movements. It tracks when they eat. So I can tell you after a month or so that this patient is wearing off at 11 o'clock. Or I can tell you, oh, okay, we need to adjust this with their medication or treatment and so forth. And they're doing this now in hospitals, these so-called smart hospitals, where it comes to monitoring, wireless monitoring, where they're monitoring your respiratory rate, all these kind of things without any devices. So, it's coming. I don't know when, I don't know how, or even how you feel about it, but just realize with ambient technology, what that means is ambient. It's stuff that you don't even see that's monitoring what's going on. And in theory, providing us with information to provide better health care. All right, so in conclusion, that's good, plenty of time for questions. Trust and verify. The human input is very important. Always double check. These systems aren't perfect. They're continuing to learn, but you need to double check. Feedback is the key so the model can continue to learn. There are going to be ethical and regulatory questions that remain regarding AI scribing, but it still remains one of the most applicable, transparent AI features that if you as a physician can adapt. And data shows that the AI scribing saves physicians time and reduces burnout. Questions? Thank you. We'll go here, then here. Mm-hmm.
I think our contribution as neurologists to AI should be that the correct terminology when people are making up stuff. That's called adulation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So that's a good term. Hallucination is the AI term for confabulation. That's right. Oh, we'll go here and then there. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Doc. I was going to reference this to way many years, even before AI was in the picture, was that one of the CDs, House on Cards, which I don't know if a lot of people have seen or not, referenced to how it is more of like a psychological warfare that was being used in politics and like decision making. But my question alludes to this ethical dilemma that I still carry, whereby I'm consuming more and more AI-generated information. And this stems from like a random friend of mine stating that I am going on YouTube, playing this ambient music, which has an ambient video going on, which is definitely AI-generated. And to what extent do we let that consume us? And then where do I, and how do I question, how do I answer the question about ethical consumption of AI in increasing productivity? Because if this goes, in the next steps, as you mentioned, smart rooms and data monitoring, to which we are not even, we are not aware of, and then replacing scribes and human scribes and like the job market turnover and that thing. Like I will be a physician hopefully soon, and that will be still secured for a couple of years. But there are certain professions which are going to be affected much more sooner for AI. So how do I like deal with that ethical dilemma on how when it comes to consumption of AI?
Yeah, you brought up a number of good points. And first, I'll tackle the first one first as far as regulation. What we're trying to avoid in AI is what happened with EHR, where we create this system that's supposed to make the physician lives better. We can share records and all the things that came over to HR. But then we weren't really involved, more the insurance companies were involved, and then we got this product that when you start using it, you're like, man, this doesn't really benefit me as much so here. So what we're trying to do as a house and what our employee is to be more involved at the forefront in producing these products. When it comes to the data, data is key to this whole industry. And when you start digging into lab data, when you start digging into genetics, when you start digging into that, that's going to be the key, is who controls that data. Because that data there's economical value to it, there's ethical value to it, there's everything else. So what I've seen is that at large levels, such as systems, like large systems that are adapting this technology, they're forming these committees between the lawyers and the technologists and everyone else to try to figure out how to control that. But the answer is, the best term that I hear nowadays that's pretty consistent when it comes to a lot of the issues you just addressed was that right now we're in the wild, wild west phase. And it is. You got these young tech-savvy people who saw the .com and they saw everything else and they're like, man, healthcare is cool. There's a lot of money in healthcare. Let's create something. And then you create it and it has that cool thing value about it, makes people's lives easier, but then we don't really have the infrastructure in place to regulate it. And that's where this fight between, will it be regulated at a federal or a state level, like all that's coming into play. And my fear is that the technology is going to continue to develop before we can develop that regulatory piece. That is a fear of mine. There was one more thing. I think that addressed everything. Okay.
Hey, thank you so much. So what happened to the data of the clinic visit after the notice formulated?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I haven't gotten a good answer to that. But from my understanding, it's not a recording. So it was a couple of things. So when I first started I used a bridge. And this goes back to what I said earlier about how you implement it largely has based. So at UT where I practiced, they had a bridge and DAX, but we weren't given a choice as to which one we could pilot because it all depended on your department, which one they bought. But in the beginning, like you have to cut your Bluetooth off your phone. And so for a while, I would go a whole day and I would record all these visits and none of them recorded. So it became a big problem because I had to remember and everything else, but then I learned to do that. When I asked what the data goes, apparently it's not supposed to be kept or housed. How true or accurate that is, I don't know. I didn't sign any consents to keep my patient data or anything else. So I think there's going to be a case by case based on the product. But I do think that is housed somewhere because that's the next phase in that these companies are looking for data. And so they're going to start coming to physicians and saying, hey, I've got this cool product for Parkinson's disease. So can I look at your data for all your Parkinson's patients and so forth? So I don't have a good answer for you right there because that's a little bit of that gray area. Some companies may say, oh, it's deleted automatically. In technology, I find that hard to believe. We'll go here and then here.
Hi. Thank you, Dr. Patton, for the talk. So Dr. Patton and I go way back from, not too way back, actually.
Yeah.
Just seems like yesterday from residency.
Absolutely,
Right?
at Baylor together.
Way back.
Yeah.
But so I think one of the areas where I really struggle when it comes to this, I use an AI scribe. In our practice, we use CarePilot, which actually can put in orders and can act almost like an MA, where, maybe taking some of the initial history and popping in the orders based on my notes. And then just about the data as far as like what I understand with mine, the audio files are not kept. It's not even really, I suppose, recorded, or maybe the recording is like for moments. And then what our data looks like is like it looks like a court reporter transcript type of thing. And then on one page, and then you go to the next page, and it's our note that integrates for my EMR at least.
That's what I've been told as well. That the recording is not kept.
And I think I would imagine those data files would be pretty large to store. But I guess I don't know enough about that. But I think where I really struggle with the AI scribe programs, or AI in general in the practice, ends up being the consent process, because I don't fully understand everything that we need to be consenting for. before, and I wonder if you could give us insight on that.
Yeah.
I just moved to going ahead and doing a written consent in our practice that ChatGPT was able to help write for me. It's, I will do AI scribe. My MA may do some portion of it, so I didn't feel like just a verbal consent when I finally make it to the room wouldn't be enough. And then billers and, all these like back-end companies that are doing our revenue management are also starting to incorporate AI into what they're doing. And so it's almost as if a patient doesn't have an option to say no to the AI anymore, because it's just everywhere seeped into, whether it's our portion or someone else's portion. And so I'm wondering if, because I know the laws were updated, I think in 2025 from what I understand from the TMA, and what do we have to consent for? Like, what do we have to say?
The laws were updated, but I think it's still a gray area. What exactly is a consent? There's something you mentioned earlier about, so there's implicit consent, meaning that, as I mentioned before, at some point, will patients just have to know that everyone is using AI? I don't think we're there yet. From speaking with the producers of the program that I use, I was told that, so in my template, when I click a bridge new patient or a bridge follow, it has a checkbox. And it just says that I talked to the patient, it says that they're consenting using AI and the data, blah, 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 and I just click it. And I've been told that that is enough. But in general, particularly as we start seeing the communication between these programs, meaning what data set and collect so forth, that consent process is going to become more extreme. So to be honest with you, I think next legislative session, we'll probably have more to come out about that. Because even though they passed laws, it's still not completely great. I was sitting in a session recently about this, and everybody in the room had different ways in which they were consenting. Some people were doing general consents, meaning in my clinic, we use AI. Just sign here if you're okay with that. And that could include your dictation, that could include labs, include anything. Other people were more specific with every component they would use a consent. So as a medical economics board and TNS, we're trying to stay on top of that and be able to provide real advice as far as what is a consent that you can use.
I'll just speak
I can't take it.
I am aware of at least one conference called Aurora that actually does social care. They're actually able to record conversations that social workers have, and they can translate it not only into a note, but also put in the billing that actually is associated with that. And I was wondering, are these companies moving towards that? What are the failures to make the process more complete and not just a transcription of what you've spoken about?
So I'm going to say something, hopefully it doesn't get me in trouble, but insurance companies are using AI technology to look at claims. Their laws have been written that are not supposed to, but I do think that is happening. I'll say it's my opinion that it's happening. But on the flip side, every industry, whether it be pharmaceuticals, whether it be, like I said, billing and collection, is trying to figure out how to use AI when it comes to the billing. Some programs, like you have, are more sophisticated at doing that. But it becomes a little bit of a issue when you have a company, for instance, you have a company that may say, like, we only want to do scribing. We only want to do scribing because once you get into the billing aspect, that's a whole nother regulatory aspect that you have to build out into your algorithm and everything else. Now, to your point though, because of demand, I do think that a lot of these programs that I showed you, most of them are moving into that direction, especially as we collect more data. And so now you can train the model, because these models can be continuously trained to get better and better at, okay, how do I place these codes and make sure that the documentation is matching the coding, to make sure that physicians, our notes are complete, thorough, and can get things going well. Because on the flip side, we are fighting insurers that are doing that as well to say that this doesn't meet compliance. So, yet still to come. All right. Well, thank you so much. That's my time. Thank you.